A poor boy, a dying billionaire, and a photo that unlocks buried secrets. What connects a street-smart orphan to a powerful woman gasping her last breath? Sit back, relax, as we dive into this unforgettable story where truth, betrayal, and fate collide on a train that changes everything. The train was somewhere in Ohio when a loud thump came from Victoria's private car. The conductor was called. People whispered. Moments later, a steward ran down the aisle calling for a doctor. "She's not breathing," someone shouted. "Miss Langford collapsed." Malik's heart pounded. Without thinking, he dropped his sketchbook and ran toward the commotion. He shoved past curious passengers and stumbled into the car, where Victoria lay sprawled on the velvet carpet, her skin pale, her mouth parted as if gasping for something she could no longer reach. No one else moved. But Malik did. He had seen someone do this before, his grandmother, when she'd saved a neighbor with a heart condition. Hands shaking, Malik knelt beside Victoria, tilted her head back, and began chest compressions. He counted, pressed, breathed. "Come on, lady," he whispered. "Don't die." 30 seconds. A minute. She gasped, coughed, eyes fluttered open. The room exploded in noise, people clapping, gasping, praising the brave young boy. But all Malik could see was the silver locket that had fallen from her neck. It had cracked open on the floor. Inside was a photo, worn and faded, a woman and a man holding a baby. His mother. And a man he didn't know. Malik froze, his entire body went cold. Victoria looked at him, dazed but alert. Her eyes widened when she saw the photo in his hand. Her mouth moved, but only a whisper came out. "You're his son." Then she fainted again. And just like that, Malik's world cracked open. Some hours ago, the train hissed like a great sleeping beast as it prepared to leave the station. A long whistle echoed through the vaulted ceilings of New York's Grand Central Terminal, blending with the hum of passengers, clinking luggage, and the scratch of polished shoes on marble floors. Among the crowd was a small figure, 12-year-old Malik Johnson, clutching a worn backpack with one strap broken and dragging a duffel bag almost as large as he was. Malik looked out of place amid the wealthy commuters and first-class travelers boarding the Elysian Express, a private cross-country luxury train that would carry them from New York to San Francisco. The Elysian was no ordinary train. It was a hotel on wheels. Mahogany-paneled walls, gold-trimmed chandeliers, private suites with butlers, and a piano bar that played jazz from dusk until the desert turned dark. Malik didn't belong here, not with his frayed hoodie, cracked sneakers, and the patch on his left elbow that his late grandmother had sewn. Yet here he was, holding a one-way ticket sent to him by a law firm he'd never heard of, summoning him to California. The letter had been delivered by hand, signed in elegant cursive. Langford Blythe Moore, in matters of inheritance and guardianship. He had no idea what any of that meant. All he knew was his life in Chicago had fallen apart after his grandmother passed. His mother, once vibrant and joyful, had disappeared 2 years ago after a nervous breakdown, and his father, well, he had never met the man. Foster care had been cold and full of rules. So when the envelope came with the promise of a future, Malik packed up what little he had and boarded the train with a heavy heart and a flicker of hope. With 3 cars ahead, in the glass-domed observation car, a woman sat beneath the golden light of a crystal lamp, sipping champagne and reviewing documents on a tablet. She was the kind of woman who made silence feel expensive. Victoria Langford, the tech billionaire whose name was whispered with awe in boardrooms and business schools. She was sharp-eyed, steel-hearted, and alone by design. She didn't like trains, too slow, too exposed, but she was avoiding a flight for personal reasons. There were too many ghosts in the sky. Her assistant had tried to talk her out of taking this trip, but Victoria insisted. She needed to meet the boy, quietly, from a distance, without press, without handlers. She knew things about Malik Johnson that he didn't know about himself. And she owed someone, an old promise she'd never forgotten. Malik found his room in the economy sleeper car. It smelled like lemon cleaner and old leather. His bunk was narrow, the sheets crisp. As the train rumbled to life and began gliding out of the station, He pressed his forehead to the window and watched the city shrink behind him, skyscrapers giving way to tunnels, bridges, and then fields. He didn't notice the elegant woman in the black suit step silently into the car ahead of him. He didn't see her pause, glance in his direction, then quickly turn away before anyone could notice the flicker of emotion in her eyes. That evening, the dining car buzzed with conversation. Waiters in white jackets served filet mignon and truffle risotto. People clinked wine glasses and laughed over candlelight. Malik, with his food voucher, sat alone at a corner table, eating grilled cheese and tomato soup, watching everyone around him like they belonged in a movie. That's when he saw her. Victoria Langford swept in like a gust of winter wind. Her presence silenced the room without a word. She sat at a private table near the center, her back straight, her face unreadable. But when her eyes briefly met Malik's, something shifted in her expression, like recognition, and for a second Malik's heart stuttered. Did she know him? Had he seen her before? He looked down quickly, not wanting to stare. As the train roared westward, through fields and mountains, Malik couldn't stop staring at the photo. Secrets hurtled toward him faster than the wheels beneath his feet. He didn't know who the man in the photo was. He didn't know why this woman, the billionaire Victoria Langford, had a picture of his mother. And he didn't know what she meant when she said, "You're his son." But one thing's clear. This wasn't just a trip. It was a beginning. And maybe, just maybe, the truth was somewhere on this train. Malik couldn't sleep. He lay on the narrow bunk in his sleeper cabin, staring up at the ceiling as the train clattered into the night. Outside the window, moonlight flashed across the trees. The silver locket sat on the table next to him, its cracked hinge barely holding together. Inside, the photograph haunted him. It wasn't just the image of his mother that unsettled him. It was the man beside her. Tall, serious-looking, dressed in a pressed military uniform, a small boy nestled in his arms. Malik. That much was clear now. But if that man was his father, then who was Victoria Langford? And why did she have that picture? Malik's fingers trembled as he picked up the locket again. There were tiny engraved initials on the back. JL and VL. Johnson and Langford. His heart pounded. Was it possible that this rich, cold woman who nearly died in front of him was family? The next morning, Malik skipped breakfast. He wandered the train cars, searching, though for what, he wasn't entirely sure. Maybe answers. Maybe just someone to tell him this was all a weird dream. Passengers moved aside as he passed. Some whispered, "That's the kid who saved the billionaire." Others tried to shake his hand or offer him money. He avoided them all, keeping his hood up and head low, until he found himself outside the luxury car guarded by a stern-faced steward. "She's not taking visitors," the man said. I just need to talk to her for a minute," Malik said. The man folded his arms. "Miss Langford is resting. Doctor's orders." Malik hesitated. Then he pulled the locket from his pocket and held it up. The steward's eyes widened. "Where did you get that?" "She dropped it." The man looked conflicted, then reached for the intercom inside. "Ma'am, the boy is here, the one who saved you. He has the photo." There was a long pause. Then her voice came through, quiet but sharp. "Let him in." Victoria Langford sat upright in a leather armchair, wrapped in a soft cashmere blanket, with a nurse standing nearby. Despite her near-death collapse the night before, she looked just as intimidating as before. Only now her eyes held something different. Vulnerability. "Sit," she said without preamble, gesturing to the seat across from her. Malik did. For a moment, the train's rhythmic hum filled the silence between them. Then she spoke. "You look like him." "Like who?" Malik asked. She sighed. "Your father, Jordan." Malik's chest tightened. "Jordan? Langford?" "My brother." He blinked. "Wait, that means I'm your aunt." The words hung in the air like fog. "I didn't even know I had an aunt," he said slowly. "I didn't know you were alive," she replied. Not for sure. Malik's thoughts spiraled. Why did you have that picture of my mom? And why were you looking for me now? Victoria looked away, out the window at the passing countryside. Because I failed him, she said, her voice barely a whisper. I failed my brother, and I promised I would fix it. Someday. I just never thought someday would be you. What happened to him? Malik asked, voice barely steady. Her jaw tensed. That's complicated. I've got time, Malik said. Victoria studied him for a long time, then slowly she spoke. Your father and I grew up in a wealthy family. Our parents were strict. He wanted to join the military. I wanted to build tech. We were both driven, but he had a softer heart. He fell in love with your mother, Elena. She was brilliant, beautiful. But our family didn't approve. Not because of her race, but because she had no money, no status. Malik's throat tightened. They ran off, eloped. I helped them, secretly. But after he deployed, everything changed. There were rumors, accusations. Your mother began having episodes, mental health issues. My brother, he never made it back, killed overseas. Your mother vanished soon after. Victoria paused, closing her eyes. I searched for years, then gave up, until a letter arrived. Someone had seen a boy in Chicago who looked exactly like Jordan. That was me, Malik whispered. Victoria nodded. I hired a firm to find you, discreetly. I didn't want the press to ruin your life if I was wrong, but I was never wrong. Malik looked down at the locket in his hand. Why didn't anyone come for me? Why did I have to grow up in shelters and foster homes? I didn't know you existed until 6 months ago, and when I found out, it felt too late. But when I saw your name on the manifest for this train, I booked a ticket. I wanted to meet you before telling you anything. And then you collapsed, Malik said flatly. She chuckled softly, coughing. Yeah, bad timing. The rest of the day passed like a dream. Victoria explained the trust fund Jordan had set up for his child, money he'd saved from deployments and inheritance. She explained the private boarding school in California, waiting for Malik if he wanted it. She explained how Malik's mother, Elena, had been found in a mental health facility in Oregon 2 years earlier, alive but barely responsive. I didn't want to overwhelm you, she said, but you deserve to know the truth. Malik said nothing for a while. Then, I want to see her. My mum. Victoria nodded. We'll make it happen. He rose to leave, his heart full of questions. Just as he reached the door, Victoria called out, Malik. He turned. Thank you for saving my life. He nodded once, then disappeared into the corridor. As night fell, the train sped into the mountains. Malik stood alone in the observation car, watching moonlight dance across the peaks. Somewhere behind him was a billionaire who was also his aunt. Somewhere ahead was a mother he didn't know if he could forgive. But for the first time in years, Malik didn't feel invisible. He felt real. Seen. And the truth, no matter how messy, was finally on the tracks ahead. The train hummed like a distant lullaby as it sped across the flatlands of Colorado. Outside the panoramic windows of the observation car, the landscape rolled into shadows under the weight of approaching nightfall. Malik sat curled up in a corner booth, a thick blanket over his lap, and his sketchbook open in front of him. But he hadn't drawn a single line. His mind wouldn't stay still. Every time he blinked, he saw Victoria's eyes, the same grey shade his grandmother once said his father had. Every time he tried to eat, he imagined his mother in that hospital, staring into space, not knowing her son had grown into a boy, with pain knotted in his chest like tangled thread. The questions kept piling up, each heavier than the last. Why did nobody fight to find him sooner? Why did the system fail him? Why did he feel more connected to a dead man he'd never met than to anyone alive? Malik let his pencil roll to the floor. He needed answers, more than Victoria had offered. And somewhere deep inside him, he knew. She wasn't telling him everything. Later that evening, Victoria's private car was quiet. Her nurse had gone to bed. The lights were dimmed. The door was slightly ajar. Malik hesitated outside it. He wasn't proud of what he was about to do, but he wasn't ready to leave this train not knowing the full truth either. Quietly, carefully, he slipped inside. The room smelled faintly of perfume and old books. Her coat hung neatly on a brass hook. A leather suitcase sat half-zipped near the bed, and next to it, tucked beneath a silk scarf, was a weathered olive-green notebook, wrapped in a leather strap. Malik's fingers trembled as he pulled it out. The initials burned into the leather cover made his heart stutter. J.L. Jordan Langford. His father. He sat on the floor beside the bed and slowly untied the strap. Inside were handwritten pages, yellowed by time. Most were dated more than a decade ago. The first entry read, "If I don't come back and my son ever finds this, I want him to know I tried. I tried to come home. I tried to be the father he deserved." Malik's breath caught. He turned the page. Her name was Elena, your mother. She lit up every room she walked into. I never deserved her love, but she gave it freely. When the world turned its back on us, she held me. When my parents disowned me, she gave me her whole heart. If you're reading this, son, I hope she made it through. I hope you both did. Another page. They sent me to Afghanistan. I don't know if I'll survive, but I'm writing this for you. Because if I don't come back, I want someone to know that you were everything to me, even before you were born. I asked my sister to protect you. She promised she would. Malik's hands were shaking. His eyes blurred with tears. Victoria had known. She had promised his father. But she hadn't come for him, not until now. A soft voice startled him. I was going to give that to you before the end of the trip. Malik spun around. Victoria stood in the doorway, arms folded across her chest, watching him. She didn't look angry, just tired, sad, like someone who had spent too many years running from the past. You promised him, Malik said, his voice breaking. You promised you'd protect me. I did, she said, but I failed. Why? Victoria sat down across from him, not trying to take the journal back. When Jordan died, I broke. I threw myself into work, into money, into everything that helped me forget how much I lost. Elena disappeared. Everyone assumed. The worst. I did too. For years. Then I found out she'd had a son. You. But by the time I traced you, you'd already been through so much. I didn't know how to show up in your life without making it worse. Malik stared at her. You're rich, he said. You could have pulled me out of the system, given me a home, given me answers. Victoria nodded. Yes, and I will regret not doing that for the rest of my life. The air was heavy between them. Malik didn't know what he was feeling anymore. Grief, rage, confusion, all tangled together like barbed wire in his throat. He held up the journal. Why keep this from me? Because it hurt, she whispered. Every time I read it, I saw everything I failed to do. But you deserve it now, all of it. And if you hate me for the rest of your life, I'll understand. Malik shook his head slowly. I don't hate you, he said, but I don't know if I can forgive you either. Victoria reached into her coat and pulled out something else, a yellow envelope. She handed it to him. He opened it. Inside was a letter from the same law firm, but this one wasn't for custody or guardianship. It was from Elena, his mother. Handwritten. To my Malik, if you're reading this, you found your way back to your family. I don't know if I was there to see it, but I want you to know. I never stopped loving you, not for 1 second. They took you from me, the world broke me. But I held onto your face in my mind every single day. You saved me, even when I was lost. I'm sorry for everything I couldn't give you. But now that you're older, maybe you can come find me. Love, Mom. Malik clutched the letter to his chest. Tears streamed down his cheeks silently. For the first time in his life, he didn't feel like a ghost. He felt real, loved, wanted. And for the first time, he wasn't alone. They sat in silence for a long while. No more secrets, no more lies. Just the soft rattle of train wheels and the quiet hum of healing beginning. Finally, Victoria said, We'll arrive in California in 2 days. I've arranged for us to visit your mother's facility, if you're ready." Malik nodded. He didn't know what he'd find there, but he knew this. He wasn't just the boy from Southside anymore. He was Malik Langford, son of Elena, son of Jordan. And soon he would look his mother in the eyes and maybe, just maybe, bring her back from wherever she'd gone. The train arrived in California under a quiet sky, pale with early morning mist. Malik stood on the platform outside the Union Station terminal, shoulders tense, hands buried deep in the pockets of his hoodie. He stared at the black SUV waiting for them by the curb, its tinted windows making it look more like a hearse than a ride to the living. Inside, his heart beat unevenly, half from nerves, half from a sorrow he hadn't fully acknowledged until now. He was going to see his mother. Not a dream, not a whisper in a journal, not a face in a faded photo. Elena Langford. Victoria appeared beside him, dressed in a tailored navy blue coat, her grey scarf tucked neatly around her neck. She didn't speak. She just stood beside him, a silent pillar of support. Malik's breath fogged in front of him. "I don't know what I'm supposed to say to her," he murmured. "You don't have to say anything," Victoria replied gently. "Just let her see you." They got into the car, and the journey began. The facility was located an hour outside the city, tucked away behind tall trees, overlooking a quiet lake. It didn't look like a hospital, more like an estate that had grown weary over the years. Ivy crawled along its stone walls, and doves flitted from rooftop to rooftop. Malik stared out the window, fighting the cold in his chest. He'd imagined this moment for years, what his mother might look like, what she might say. In some daydreams, she ran to him, arms wide. In others, she didn't remember his name. Nothing could have prepared him for the truth. Inside, the staff greeted them with soft smiles. The director, a warm, bespectacled woman named Dr. March, ushered them into her office before the visit. "Elena has made progress, slowly," she explained, folding her hands on the table. "She has what we call selective engagement. Some days she responds well. Other days she's unreachable. She paints, draws, talks in pieces. But she has mentioned a son several times." Malik's breath caught. "She remembers me." Dr. March nodded. "She says your name often, sometimes in full sentences, sometimes like a prayer." That did it. Tears welled in Malik's eyes, but he blinked them away and stood. "I want to see her." "Of course," the doctor said softly. They walked through a long corridor lined with paintings, some abstract, some childlike. Malik stopped in front of one. It was a charcoal sketch of a boy with curly hair sitting beside a tall man in uniform. Below it, scrawled in uneven handwriting, "Malik Jordan." His hands trembled as he reached for the doorknob. Inside, the room was sunlit, simple, a small desk, a bed, and a wooden easel facing the window. A woman sat at the easel, brush in hand, swaying gently to music only she could hear. Malik stepped inside quietly. The woman turned, and there she was, Elena. Her hair was silvering at the roots, tied back in a messy bun. Her eyes were deep brown, tired but wide. She wore a white cardigan smeared with paint, and for a moment, just a second, Malik didn't recognize her. But then she smiled, not wide, not sudden, just a soft, knowing curve of her lips, like a breeze from the past had returned to her skin. "Malik?" she whispered. He froze. "Yes," he said, his voice a whisper. "Mom, it's me." She blinked, slowly rising from her stool. Her brush clattered to the floor. She stepped toward him, trembling. "You're real?" she asked. He nodded, tears slipping silently down his cheeks. "I thought they took you. I thought I dreamed you," she cried, clutching his face. "You're taller than I remember. Your eyes. Jordan's eyes." He wrapped his arms around her, and she melted into him like water into earth. For the first time in over a decade, mother and son stood together, alive. They sat for hours, side by side, as Elena showed him her sketchbooks. Malik listened as she recounted fragments of memory, How after Jordan's death, she'd spiraled into grief. How child services had taken Malik while she was hospitalized. How she searched and screamed until her mind folded in on itself. I kept hearing your cry in my head, she said, but no one listened. They called it a breakdown. But my heart never broke. It kept beating for you. Malik didn't know how to respond, so he didn't. He just held her hand. At one point, she turned to Victoria, standing silently by the door. I told him, she said. Jordan, I told him you'd be the one to find Malik. Victoria stepped forward, something cracking in her stoic face. I'm sorry I waited so long, she whispered. Elena nodded. But you came. That was all she said. That was all that needed to be said. When it was time to leave, Elena walked them to the exit. She looked better, eyes clearer, posture stronger. Will I see you again? She asked Malik, her voice small. He smiled. You'll see me every week. I'm not going anywhere. She cupped his cheek, kissed his forehead, and whispered something in his ear, words he didn't fully understand, but would carry forever. As they stepped back into the SUV, Malik looked out of the window at the lake beyond the trees. His chest no longer felt hollow. The wind didn't bite as hard. The silence wasn't as loud. For the first time in his life, he had something that no system, no pain, no lost years could take away from him. A name, a history, a mother. That night, back in Victoria's penthouse apartment overlooking Los Angeles, Malik sat on the balcony sketching. Not buildings, not superheroes. This time it was a family. Him, Elena, Jordan, Victoria. And beneath it he scrawled 3 words that made his hand shake. Still becoming whole. The Los Angeles morning sun filtered through the tall windows of Victoria's penthouse, painting the floor with soft golden streaks. Malik stood barefoot in the living room, staring at a sealed envelope lying on the kitchen counter. It had been there when he returned from the facility the night before, placed neatly next to a steaming cup of mint tea, and a folded note from Victoria that read, When you're ready, open it. The envelope was old, yellowed around the edges, the ink slightly faded. On the front, written in a familiar hand, were the words, To my son, in case I never make it back. Dad. Malik hadn't touched it last night. He'd been too full of emotion, of memories, of the scent of his mother's cardigan as she hugged him like she'd never let go again. But now, with the soft hum of the city beneath him and the ocean breeze filtering through the terrace doors, he was ready. He opened it slowly, carefully, almost reverently. Inside was a single-page letter, folded crisply. His father's words hit like thunder in a quiet room. Dear Malik, if you're reading this, I didn't make it home. That thought breaks my heart. I've thought about you every day. I prayed to live, not just for myself, but to see you smile, to hold your little hand, to teach you how to ride a bike, to be your dad the way you deserved. But war is cruel. And I was sent to a place where cruelty was the language of survival. There's something you need to know, Malik. Something I never got to tell your mom either. I wasn't just a soldier. I was a whistleblower. I discovered a network. Illegal arms deals, cover-ups, betrayals that went deep. I kept records, names, photos. I was going to go public, and that made me a target. If I died suddenly or disappeared, it wasn't just war. It was silencing. I didn't want to drag your mother or you into danger, but if you're grown enough to read this now, maybe you're old enough to understand. Sometimes doing the right thing costs you everything. I left the files with someone I trusted. If you ever feel strong enough to finish what I started, go to the address below. But son, if you don't want to carry this, I'll never blame you. You've carried more than enough already. Just know this, no matter what happens, you were always my greatest victory. Love, Dad. Malik sat down slowly, the letter shaking in his hands. His father hadn't just died in battle. He was murdered. Silenced. Because he tried to stand for something. And now, that fight, buried in a dusty envelope, was in Malik's hands. That evening, Malik stood in Victoria's study. The room was lined with books and photos of international events, her shaking hands with presidents, CEOs, UN ambassadors. For the first time, he saw her not just as his aunt or a billionaire, but as someone powerful enough to make things happen. He handed her the letter. She read it silently. When she finished, she didn't say anything for a long moment. Her jaw tightened, her eyes darkened. Finally, she looked up. "I knew he was in trouble," she whispered, "but I didn't know the depth of it. Not like this." Malik pointed to the bottom of the letter. "He left an address. He said someone there has the files." Victoria took a deep breath. "We'll go there together." "No," Malik said firmly. "I'll go." Victoria narrowed her eyes. "You're 15, Malik." "I've already lived twice that," he shot back. This is the last piece of him I have left. If I don't see it through, I'll never forgive myself." Victoria studied him as if weighing not just the words, but the boy standing in front of her. A boy who had once been invisible in the foster system, now stepping into the shadows of something bigger than both of them. "Then I'll make the arrangements," she said quietly, "but you won't go alone." The address led to a small town outside San Francisco, a quiet coastal place called Ravenshaw, the kind of town where everyone knew each other's stories, or at least pretended they did. Victoria sent one of her trusted assistants, a former intelligence officer named Eva, to accompany Malik. She looked like someone who could break bones with a smile. They found the address, a tiny bookstore tucked between a laundromat and a coffee shop. It was called Second Chances. Inside, the bell chimed as they entered. An old man behind the counter looked up over his spectacles. His eyes landed on Malik, and something changed in his face. "You're Jordan's boy," he said hoarsely. Malik nodded. "He said you had something he left behind." The man, his name was Thomas Bray, led them through the back, down a narrow staircase into a basement. He opened a false wall behind a stack of books. Inside was a safe. "I've guarded this for 12 years, Thomas said. "Didn't think anyone would ever come." He unlocked it with shaking hands. Inside were flash drives, photos, audio tapes, handwritten notes, maps, and one sealed envelope labeled Department of Defense Confidential. Malik's mouth went dry. This wasn't just a personal tragedy anymore. This was a hidden war, and his father had died trying to expose it. That night, back in his hotel room, Malik sat on the floor, surrounded by pieces of a puzzle he wasn't sure how to finish. Eva paced nearby, speaking softly into a secure line with Victoria. But Malik barely noticed. Because in that moment, staring at photos of men in suits, cash-filled briefcases, coordinates scribbled in Jordan's hand, he understood something. He wasn't just recovering his father's legacy. He was about to uncover a secret that could shatter powerful people. The son of a whistleblower was about to become a whistle himself. And somewhere in the heart of Washington, D.C., in a room filled with surveillance feeds and encrypted emails, a blinking red alert came on screen. Subject: Jordan Langford's son located. Status: active. Initiate Phase 2. It started with a shadow. A flash of movement in the hotel hallway outside Malik's door. He thought it was nothing, just a passing guest, a shift in light. But when he opened the door and looked down both ends of the corridor, no one was there. Just silence. And the weight of someone watching. The next morning, Ava was gone. Her hotel room had been emptied out overnight. No luggage, no phone, no message. The receptionist claimed she'd checked out at 2:47 a.m., but Victoria hadn't received a word from her. "She wouldn't just vanish," Malik said, pacing across the floor, his heart thudding wildly. "No," Victoria replied over the video call, "she wouldn't, which means someone took her." Malik's blood turned cold. He turned to the files spread out on the desk, his father's data, the classified documents, photos from a decade ago with red X's across certain names. Men in uniforms, diplomats, even a former vice president. What had Jordan uncovered that was dangerous enough to get Ava disappeared? Malik looked down at a printed photo in his hand, a blurry image of a man shaking hands with a weapons dealer in Tunisia. His dad had labeled it in black ink. Deal confirmed, US complicit. They had silenced Jordan. And now they were watching him. That evening, Malik walked to the train station with the files stuffed into a backpack. He needed to move, fast. Victoria had chartered a private transport for him, heading to a secure estate upstate, guarded by retired military friends of hers. The plan was to lay low, reorganize the data, and figure out a way to go public. Malik never made it to the train. As he crossed the plaza, a black SUV screeched around the corner and came to a violent stop in front of him. Two men in black suits jumped out. He ran, hard, feet pounding against pavement, weaving between startled pedestrians, ducking under awnings, turning sharp corners without looking back. But they followed. They were trained, faster, smarter, and closing in. He darted into a narrow alley behind an old record store and pressed himself flat against the brick wall, chest heaving. His phone buzzed in his pocket. Unknown number. He answered with a shaky breath. A woman's voice came through. I have eyes on you, Malik. Turn left, third door, now. What? Do it, or they'll catch you. He didn't question it. He bolted left, counted 1, 2, 3 doors, then shoved the rusted one open and stumbled inside. It was a stockroom. Boxes of old vinyls and wires, a flickering light overhead, and a woman waiting in the corner, arms crossed, tall, dreadlocks pulled back, eyes like storm clouds. Name's Billy, she said. I worked with your dad. Malik's knees nearly buckled. In the small hidden room beneath the record store, Billy lit a cigarette and pointed to a wall plastered with red strings, maps, and news clippings. This is bigger than arms dealing, she said. Your father found links to international trafficking, black market resource exploitation, and corrupt aid programs funneling billions through fake non-profits. Malik blinked. Why didn't he go to the press? He tried, Billy replied, but every journalist who touched it vanished or backed out. Your father's last move was to store the data with someone safe, Thomas Bray. He trusted me too, but I was in exile. I've been watching from the dark ever since. She pulled a USB stick from her pocket. This is the encryption key. You'll need it to open the full archive. Malik took it slowly. His hands were shaking again. Why help me? Because I promised your father, she said, and because I've seen what these people do when they think no one's watching. He looked up at her. I want to expose it. Her eyes narrowed. Then we need to go underground. They left that night. No bags, no electronics, only analog copies of the data and an old burner phone. They took an old freight train up the coast, avoiding cameras and digital trails. Malik sat in the empty cargo car beside Billy, the rumble of the tracks beneath them. He watched the lights of distant towns fade into the dark. He thought of his mother, her smile, her trembling hands as she touched his face. He hadn't even told her goodbye. He thought of Eva, if she was still alive, and of Victoria, likely rallying every contact in her global network to trace his path. But more than anything, he thought of Jordan, and what kind of courage it took to do what his father did. To stand alone in the dark, with truth in one hand and death in the other. Malik pulled out his sketchpad, opened to a blank page, and began to draw. This time, not a family, but a chessboard, with kings, pawns, queens, and a shadowy figure in the background. His father once fought alone. He wouldn't be alone this time. Meanwhile, back in Ravenshaw, a man in a suit stood outside the wrecked record shop, holding a photograph of Malik. His earpiece crackled. Status? We lost him, the man replied coldly, but he has the files. A pause. Then we proceed to phase 3. No more warnings. The man crushed the photograph in his fist and walked away. Malik stared at the glowing screen, in the candlelit basement of an old chapel deep in Oregon's Cascade Mountains. The air smelled of damp stone and burnt incense. He'd barely slept in 2 days. Billy was upstairs, guarding the entrance with a rifle slung across her lap. Somewhere outside, the air smelled of damp stone and burnt incense. He'd barely slept in 2 days. Billy was upstairs, guarding the entrance with a rifle slung across her lap. Somewhere outside, under the cover of dense pine trees and fog, were men hunting them like ghosts. But none of that mattered now, because Malik had just unlocked a folder labeled Firestorm, his father's final contingency plan, a digital dead man's switch. Inside the folder were dozens of subfiles with coded names: Omega Delta, Pangea 2, Tigeriah Black. He clicked the first one. A map loaded: Africa. Red markers glowed over the Congo Basin, Somalia, and Mali. Attached were satellite images of illegal mining camps, child labor sites, and weapons convoys operated under the disguise of international aid groups. He clicked the next. It opened a file on a pharmaceutical company tied to a US senator, a company testing unapproved drugs in impoverished regions of South America. Several children had died. There were payout documents, non-disclosure agreements, and forged autopsy reports. The final file in the sequence was labeled Chimera. Inside were 12 recorded calls. One of them, Malik froze. He recognized the voice, the man who chased him at the station. The Langford boy is alive. If he opens the file, Firestorm triggers global publication. The AI system is already coded. If we don't find the encryption key soon, we'll be cleaning this mess in front of the world. The file was auto-linked to a countdown timer in the corner of the screen. 72, 0 o'clock. 3 days. 3 days until the files would be broadcast globally, unless the encrypted key was destroyed or the system shut down. It wasn't just a bombshell. It was a digital explosion about to rip through governments, corporations, and militaries. His father hadn't just tried to expose the truth. He had built a weapon with it. And now it was in Malik's hands. When Billy returned, she took one look at his pale face and said, "You found it?" "Yeah," he replied, voice hollow. "Firestorm is real." She leaned over, reading the file names, then straightened slowly. "This isn't just whistleblowing. This is cyber warfare." Malik nodded. "They'll kill to stop this." "They already are," Billy said. "But if we trigger the release, Malik, there's no going back. Countries will fall. People will panic. Leaders will vanish overnight. Chaos." Malik looked her in the eye. "They killed my dad. They locked up my mum. They disappeared Eva. I'm done hiding." Billy said nothing. Then she reached into her coat, pulled out a small square drive, and slid it across the table. "This is the trigger key. Your father gave it to me years ago. I never touched it. Until now." Malik picked it up. It was warm, heavy, marked with 3 letters burned into the metal. JLL Jordan Lee Langford. His heart clenched. It was like holding his father's voice. That night they moved again, this time towards the coast. Victoria had secured passage on a freighter bound for Iceland. A contact there, a rogue journalist named Anya Frey, had been preparing for this story since Jordan's disappearance. Anya was their only shot at getting the files into the right hands before governments tried to shut them down. The world needed to hear the truth, but it had to be done right. Because one wrong move, and Firestorm would destroy more than just corruption. It would destroy nations. As the freighter cut through icy waters under a blanket of fog, Malik sat below deck with a satellite phone in his lap. He hesitated for a long time before dialing the number. It rang twice. Then his mother answered. "Malik?" Tears welled instantly. "Hi, Mum," he whispered. Her breath hitched. "Where are you? Are you safe?" "I'm on a ship. We're going to Iceland." "Iceland," she repeated, stunned. "Why?" "I found Dad's files. Everything. It's worse than we thought." There was silence. Then, I always knew he was fighting something bigger. I'm going to finish it, Malik said. No matter what happens, I just wanted you to know. She was quiet for a beat, then softly said, Your father would be so proud. Malik choked back a tear. I miss you. I miss you more, my baby. Come home when it's done. I will, he promised. I will. At 2:13 a.m., just as the ship neared Greenlandic waters, Billy noticed something off. A blinking light, low in the corner of their cargo hold. It wasn't theirs. She sprinted toward it, just as it began to beep. A tracker. And not just any tracker. A targeting beacon. She barely had time to shout before a drone appeared in the sky, its red light piercing the fog. Missile lock. Malik's eyes widened as he grabbed the trigger key and the backpack of files. Billy shoved him toward the escape hatch. Go. No. Now, Malik. The explosion rocked the sea like thunder in hell. Malik swam in the icy water, coughing and shivering, clutching the waterproof backpack to his chest. The freighter was in flames behind him, sirens echoing from lifeboats. A helicopter was incoming, but it wasn't military. It was private. Marked with the Harrington Foundation crest, Victoria's. The door slid open. She reached down, hand outstretched. He took it. She pulled him inside, soaked and shaking. You have the files? She asked. He nodded, teeth chattering. And the trigger? He held it up. Then let's show them who they messed with. As the chopper rose into the pale dawn sky, Malik stared out the window at the wreckage behind them. He wasn't scared anymore. He was fire. He was his father's voice. And he was just getting started. The chopper touched down on a remote, frost-covered landing pad in Reykjavik, Iceland, just as a snowstorm began to roll in. Victoria pulled Malik into a sleek, steel-grey building disguised as a geothermal research lab. Beneath it lay one of Europe's most secure underground data bunkers, built to survive nuclear war, and now, hopefully, a digital one. Anya Frey is waiting, Victoria said, brushing snow from her coat. Malik followed silently, the cold biting his skin, the trigger key like a stone in his pocket. Inside the bunker, the air buzzed with electricity and urgency. Rows of monitors blinked. Satellite feeds ran in real time. Encrypted messages flashed across global chat rooms and darknet forums. Words like Firestorm, Langford Files, and Black Ice Op were already surfacing among whistleblower communities. The secret was leaking, and they hadn't even triggered the full release yet. Anya stood in the center of the room, short, lean, fire-eyed, with a thick Scandinavian accent and a press badge from 5 international outlets. Malik Langford, she said, you look like your father. I hear that a lot, he replied. Anya gestured to a console. Let's make the dead live again. The files were uploaded to 3 mirrored servers, one in Iceland, one in Kenya, and one in the Pacific Northwest. Anya began cataloging the data for public release. Human rights abuses, state-sponsored espionage, war profiteering networks tied to major corporations and charities, real-time audio of high-level politicians trading contracts in exchange for children trafficked out of conflict zones. It was, as she called it, the death of innocence. Victoria leaned close to Malik. Once this goes live, you're a marked man. You understand that, right? He nodded. But I'm already marked, he said. Might as well do something with it. At exactly 9 p.m., they initiated Phase 1 of the Firestorm drop. Encrypted files and verified summaries were sent to trusted journalists across 5 continents. Hidden messages were embedded into blockchain and AI translated into 43 languages. A timer was set, 24 hours until the full drop. But within 5 minutes, the internet roared to life. Headlines exploded. Langford Files leak alleged global conspiracy. US and EU face questions over secret exploitation rings. $1 billion NGO scam tied to African resource thefts. Where is the Langford boy? Malik watched it unfold like a wildfire across the world. Hashtags trended globally. Protests sparked in Johannesburg, Rio, Berlin, and New York. And still, they hadn't even revealed the worst yet. But then came the blowback. At 2:13 a.m., the first counter-strike hit. A Firestorm server in the US was taken down by an electromagnetic pulse. A cyber attack traced to a military contractor nearly wiped the Iceland server too, until Anya's team shut down the network and went dark. Worse, Billy's body was found in Copenhagen, execution style. No one claimed responsibility. But Malik knew. They're hitting back, he said, eyes rimmed red, one by one. Victoria put a hand on his shoulder. We'll finish what they started. But Malik could feel it. The betrayal was coming. By sunrise, Malik was restless. He wandered the bunker corridors, passing armed guards and engineers, finally ending up in the server room. That's where he heard it. Two techs whispering. Are you sure? She made the transfer last night. Yes, transferred backup access to the UN and the Geneva Fund. Without the kid's permission. She said he wouldn't understand, that the world needs order, not chaos. Malik froze. She? He stepped into the room. Who transferred what? The text stiffened. One tried to hide a tablet. Who sent the Firestorm backups to Geneva? They exchanged a look. And Malik's stomach turned. Victoria. When he confronted her, she was calm. Almost apologetic. I did it for you, she said. You gave the files to the same people my father was fighting against. No, she said. I gave it to the ones who can control the fallout. You want the truth out? Fine, but total chaos helps no one. People will panic. Governments will fall. We'll have global collapse. Malik stepped back. You used me. I protected you. Jordan was brilliant, but reckless. His death nearly ignited a war. I'm trying to steer us through it without burning the world down. Malik was trembling. You're no different than them. I'm the only reason you're still alive. He looked her in the eye, voice shaking with fury. You're not my family, he was. Malik disappeared that night. Took the real final trigger key, what even Victoria didn't know about. Firestorm Protocol Alpha release. Stored inside a single micro drive tucked into the sole of his shoe. It was the unedited archive. The entire truth. With no filters, no redactions, no safe hands. He sent one message to Anya. They want to curate the truth. I'm going to set it free. Meet me at the Paris rally, 6 p.m. tomorrow. She replied with just 3 words. Do it, fast. As Malik boarded a quiet night train out of Reykjavik, eyes hidden beneath a hoodie, he opened his sketchbook. On the last page, he drew a single image. A lion in a cage, bleeding, but smiling. And the cage. Cracked. He smiled back. It was time. Time to finish what his father started. A sea of people surged through Place de la République, holding signs, candles, and holographic projections of the leaked files. The entire world had seen pieces of Firestorm, enough to spark unrest, outrage, and desperate calls for reform. But the full truth still hadn't dropped. Not yet. Malik Langford stood behind the stage curtain, hands trembling, eyes locked on the encrypted micro drive in his palm, the final key, the raw, unedited truth, the very thing his father died for. Next to him, Anya Frey adjusted a mic and glanced at her tablet. We're live in over 30 countries. Every platform, every news outlet. Your face is going global in 30 seconds. Malik exhaled slowly, then let them see. Behind them, the countdown hit 0. A stage light blinked on. The digital billboard above the plaza lit up with a single phrase in bold. The lion's son speaks. Malik stepped forward into the golden light of the setting sun, his face calm, but his soul on fire. The crowd fell silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. "My name is Malik Langford," he began. "I'm 12 years old, and my father was murdered for trying to tell the truth." Cameras zoomed in, thousands of live streams picked up his voice. He wasn't a spy, he wasn't a terrorist, he was a whistleblower, a father, a man who believed the world had a right to know what was being done in their name and in the shadows. He held up the microdrive. "This device contains the full version of Firestorm, every uncut conversation, every transaction, every betrayal. From Africa to America, from corporations to governments, it's all in here." He looked directly into the camera. "And today I'm giving it to you." Gasps rippled through the crowd. Anya's eyes widened. He plugged the drive into a portable quantum uplink rig behind him, already hardwired into secure relays across the globe. Hidden nodes buried in VPN networks, dark web mirrors, and blockchain ledgers. And then he hit send. The upload initiated. 100%. Firestorm Alpha release is now public. All at once, the world convulsed. In London, BBC anchors broke down, crying live, as files showed government officials selling weapons to militias who murdered children in Sierra Leone. In Washington, D.C., protests erupted outside the Capitol as proof emerged of backdoor deals between senators and energy giants responsible for ecological disasters in the Amazon. In South Africa, families who lost children to illegal drug trials stormed the gates of a biotech compound tied to Harrington Industries. And in Kenya, thousands held a vigil in honor of Jordan Langford, the man who tried to warn them. Every corner of the globe was ablaze. The lion's roar had echoed, and there was no silencing it now. But while the people cheered, the wolves gathered. Inside a blacked-out SUV parked 2 blocks away from the rally, a voice crackled over a secure comm. He released it, full alpha protocol. Another voice growled, "Proceed." Anya noticed the red laser dot just a second too late. "Malik, get down." But the bullet never came. Victoria Harrington stepped in front of him. Her coat flared. The round hit her shoulder, then another struck her side. She collapsed. Malik screamed, catching her as she hit the ground. Blood soaked his shirt. Security scrambled. The crowd panicked. But Victoria's hand gripped his arm hard. "Listen," she gasped. "I was wrong. The world needed to see it. Your father was right. And so are you." Tears streamed down his face. "You saved me," he choked. She smiled weakly. "Your father saved us both." Her eyes fluttered shut. Sirens screamed in the distance. Anya dropped to her knees. "We have to go." But Malik didn't move. He stared into the crowd, then turned toward the camera one last time. "I'm not running anymore." The image of him kneeling beside Victoria, bloodied but unbroken, streamed around the world. And the message spread. You can kill the lion, but not his roar. Later that night, from a safe house deep in the outskirts of Lyon, Malik stared out a cracked window at a city blanketed in candlelight vigils and protest banners. Anya entered quietly. "It's happening," she said. "They're resigning, dozens of them, and tomorrow The Hague is calling for trials, global ones." Malik turned. "The world's not going back to what it was." "No," she said, "but maybe that's a good thing." He reached for the sketchbook he carried, flipped past the page of the bleeding lion, and drew a new image. A lion cub standing on a cliff, staring into the sun, roaring. And this time, the world listened. 6 months later. Location, Nairobi, Kenya. The rains had just ended. Golden rays of sunlight sliced through the morning mist that hung over the lush green hills of the Langata region. Below the acacia trees and red earth roads, a modest yet modern building stood quietly, neither palace nor fortress, but a sanctuary. A large wooden sign outside read, "The Langford Institute for Truth, Global Justice, founded in memory of Jordan Langford and Victoria Harrington, curated by Malik Langford." Inside, a group of students, children from war-torn countries, displaced regions and vulnerable communities, sat in a classroom with laptops open, screens displaying tools for investigative journalism, ethics, whistleblower protection, and cyber rights. This was Malik's vision now, not vengeance, not chaos, but education, power through knowledge, and the rebirth of conscience. And finally, he wasn't alone. From the rooftop garden, Malik looked over the city skyline. At 13 now, he'd grown taller, stronger, but still wore his father's old watch, its cracked face and silent tick, a constant reminder of time lost and truth reclaimed. Next to him, Anya Frey was sipping Kenyan coffee, reading a leaked UN memo aloud. The Global Tribunal on Crimes of Power enters day 40. 32 nations, 94 corporations, and over 200 individuals are on trial. A child with a sketchbook lit the match. History will not forget his name. She grinned. They're calling you the young Mandela of media. Malik smirked. They can call me M for all I care. I didn't do it for titles. No, Anya said, but you did it. His eyes scanned the horizon. I'm not done. The truth had reshaped the world. Several corrupt regimes had crumbled. Humanitarian aid was no longer funneled through shell companies. An international watchdog, backed by grassroots donations, not government money, was now reviewing foreign policies and corporate dealings. And Firestorm? It had become more than a leak. It was a movement. Coders turned the database into a living archive. Artists turned its revelations into murals and protest art. Schools used it as a modern civics curriculum. Even TikTokers were reenacting key expos to spread awareness. And Malik? He chose to remain visible, not for fame, but accountability. Every week he posted a video blog, The Lion's Cub, where he answered global questions, called out hypocrisy, and encouraged young people to speak out. He ended each episode the same way. Your voice matters. Your truth matters. Roar loud enough, and the world will listen. But even now the scars remained. Victoria's grave was planted beneath a flowering jacaranda tree outside the institute. Malik often sat there alone. I know you tried to protect me, he whispered once, a single red flower in hand, and I forgive you. You were brave, in your own way. He had placed her ring, one she wore during the rally, beneath a small stone, a symbol of sacrifice, of imperfect heroes. And his mother. Though she had vanished into the shadows before Firestorm broke, rumors swirled of her being in protective custody, possibly helping governments quietly dismantle trafficking networks. Malik didn't pursue it, not yet. Some wounds needed time. That afternoon, a group of international reporters arrived to interview Malik. They asked their usual questions about legacy, courage, power, but one young journalist, just 22, asked something different. Malik, you've changed the world, but what would your father say if he were here now? Malik paused. The garden grew quiet. He reached for his sketchbook, the last page untouched since Paris. And for the first time, in front of them all, he began to draw. A lion and his cub, standing side by side. Behind them, a new dawn rose. Not just in light, but in clarity. He lifted the book and said, he'd tell me, the truth has claws, son, but it also has wings. And now it's flying. Across the world, his words echoed again, not through whistleblowers this time, but through every child who picked up a pen, a mic, a brush, or a camera. The lion was gone. But the roar became the voice of a generation.
Black Stories. Subscribe, like, and share.